Okay, let's look at Standard 11, Substandard B. Describe the impact of the railroads in the development of the West. Here's our semicolon, okay? So the impact of the railroads in the development of the West, semicolon. Now, here's our focus after here. Here's what they want to focus on by this railroad and development of the West. Include, that's a clue to focus us in, the Transcontinental Railroad, building it, and the use of Chinese labor. So we see the Transcontinental Railroad being built, and then the use of Chinese labor. So our focus here is on two things: the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, and then the use of Chinese labor in the building of the Transcontinental Railroad. So our themes here are technology, the Transcontinental Railroad, the immigration with the Chinese, and the social interactions with them, and eventually, racism. We didn't treat them too well. So with this growth of the Transcontinental Railroad, we see that it's going to make it easier for people to move west, to populate in the West at a faster rate. And it's going to make life in the West possible by allowing farmers and ranchers and other settlers access to the eastern markets out here, and to send resources back to eastern markets back and forth with these railroads. But before we do, let's look at the Transcontinental Railroad, why we built it. Early in our history, this was the East, and out here in the Northwest Territory in the Mississippi River, that was the western portion of the United States in 1783. But we see with the Louisiana Purchase and the acquisition of these territories out here because of the Texas independence and the Mexican-American War and the 1849 Oregon Territory Treaty, we see we acquire all that, and our West is going to change. Our West is going to change, and this out here is going to be our West now. And now we call this the Midwest, right here between Ohio and the Mississippi River, the Midwest. And out here we call this the Plains, and this is western part of the United States that we're talking about now, out here, settling this area. This and the Plains here, settling this area out here. Alright, so if we look, we see there's a lot of Rocky Mountains out here, and then the plains, this elevation where it gradually lifts up into these mountain areas. The Rocky Mountains out here, the Sierra Nevada mountains over here. And so we see that in 1862 that the government started financing these railroads to be built, and then eventually by 1869 the Transcontinental Railroad is built. The Union Pacific Railroad comes from Omaha, Nebraska, all the way out to Utah here, Promontory Point, Utah, and it meets up with the Central Pacific Railroad that come from Sacramento, California, and they meet up in Promontory Point here, and that place there's a ceremony there where the railroads were connected, the first Transcontinental Railroad, and everybody got together toasting to it, and the men even drove a golden spike where the railroads met, this one here, and at the top is inscribed the last spike, and on the sides are the names of the people who were involved in making this happen. And it was eventually pulled up, so don't go looking for it. It was pulled up and put in on display. I think it was in the Smithsonian for a long time. Now, currently, it's in Cantor Arts Center in Stanford University. But this was made May 10th, 1869. And in 2007, we had our quarters were reminted, and on the back, art was put on there. And the last spike for Utah was a picture of the Transcontinental Railroad, these two railroads meeting together and be driven down here. Alright. So here's the Transcontinental Railroad, and they meet at Promontory Point. And if you look, you see these mountain ranges they had to plow through and work through, and it took a lot of labor. And a lot of the labor that took to get through the Sierra Nevada out here and in these Rocky Mountains over here and get through these elevations happened because of, Irish group, and even the Mormons in Utah helped out with it. But most of the harsh labor was achieved by the Chinese. They're going to have to work through these mountain passes to clear for this railroad using dynamite that was very dangerous. A lot of them are going to die out here in the Rocky Mountains, Sierra Nevada, building this Transcontinental Railroad. So Chinese labor used on the Transcontinental Railroad, you see the sign back here in 1869, and then this cartoon here, we mistreated the Chinese. They underwent a lot of discrimination in building the Transcontinental Railroad. They worked extremely more long hours than anyone else. They had very little pay, worked in harsh weather in the winters and extreme heat and dangerous environments using dynamite, and a lot of them are going to die building this Transcontinental Railroad. So we honor them. We look at their efforts and helping us build our country in the West. And some pictures here show the Chinese working on a mountain pass, getting this cleared out for the railroad to come through. And here's a portrait that is in the Library of Congress sketch by Joseph Becker, where the Chinese were working in the wintertime and building the railroad. And here's in Utah, I think here's some Mormons, and there's a few Chinese here working to clear this path right here for the railroad through this mountain pass. And here's another picture of some Chinese workers. And this guy here is getting these ties ready to put down for the railroad. And so that's the building of Transcontinental Railroad. And here's the Chinese laborers that were used. Here we see in this picture here, in this map, that from New York City we can get on a train, go all the way across, all the way over to California, San Francisco. So we overland this Transcontinental Railroad. Trans means across, continent means continent here of North America. Transcontinental Railroad takes us all the way from New York all the way over to California. So we connect the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean over land. It's a monumental affair, and we see the elevations were different all the way across. And we see that this is going to enable us to send people and goods back and forth across the country. And our economy is going to grow because of it. It's going to make it easier for people to move west and to populate the West. It's going to make it easier for them to send goods out here and for them to order goods from the East. And so Sears and Roebuck is going to make a good living on the railroad there. But, we'll watch a video on that later. But let's see, it made life in the West possible by allowing farmers and ranchers and miners and settlers to have access out here to the West. Okay, that's it. That's the Transcontinental Railroad and Chinese labor, and our standard was to describe the impact of the railroads in the development of the West, and we were to include the Transcontinental Railroad and the use of Chinese labor. Ask me questions in class. Good luck on the test.